Hey guys, so it's me, Nicolette Mashila, and I'm back and I am better. August has been a crazy month, but I'm back with your YouTube videos. And today I want to speak a little bit about Section 37C of the Pension Fund Act. And you might be sitting there wondering, what a boring topic. Why does Nicolette want to discuss the pension fund? Well, primarily it's because a lot of South Africans are currently in employment where they are contributing to a pension fund but have absolutely no understanding of how the fund actually works, but number two, how it will be distributed upon the member's death. Now, a lot of these people include also our parents who are probably going to go into retirement right now. Some of them are unfortunately facing the untimely death, and they've got pension funds that some of us don't even know about, or we do not know how they're going to be distributed and who the money is actually going to go to. Why? Because they actually fill out a beneficiaries list. But sometimes you will notice that that money never actually always goes to who the beneficiaries are that the member has actually filled into HR. But before I carry on with this video, remember that none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody who is certified and registered with the FSCA. Now, the reason why I started off with Brenda Fassis Mpondolo is because these situations happen quite a lot. Where, let's say, for instance, a woman is married or a man is married and they're married to somebody who is a financial liability. When I speak about a financial liability, I'm not necessarily speaking about somebody who might not have money, but I'm speaking about somebody that does not know how to manage money. And they may be afraid that this person, if they are to die, will not be able to manage the pension correctly. So what most people will do is that they will perhaps maybe write a beneficiary list of nominees, perhaps maybe a brother who is maybe of a sound mind, or somebody else in the family who you would like to get your pension. Unfortunately, it does not work like that. And I always say the beneficiary list is actually indeed just a guide and a wish list. Because what Section 37C of the Pension Fund Act actually says is that the trustees have the final say as to who gets to benefit from your pension fund. Now, I know this might sound very scary and quite discouraging for you, but there is a reason why this has been put in place. And I think the most important thing that we need to first clarify first is that a lot of people think because it's a pension fund, they think that it goes under their estate and is part of their will. It does not. The pension is actually legislated under and supervised, or it's got an umbrella law of its own, and it's called the Pension Fund Act, whereas a will also has its own, it's called the Wills Act, and the will probably fall under also estate law. But the pension fund is not part of your will. So you would not include your pension fund in your will because it's not an asset that falls under your estate, your estate planning. So let's start this conversation again. If you have maybe found out that your father or your mom has got additional children, or you're a spouse and you are married in community of property and you find out that your husband has got additional children that you might not have known about. He passes away and you find out that he had a pension fund where he's nominated yourself to maybe get 80% of the pension fund. That will not automatically happen. And I'll tell you why that will not automatically happen. The reason is that he might have other financial dependents outside of you that might need that money more than you. Let's repeat that. It will not happen automatically because if he has other financial dependents that might need that money more than you, that money will either be distributed so that they get the most of the benefit. Remember that the Pension Fund Act 37C, that section stipulates that all financial dependents of the deceased member who was contributing to a pension fund will need to be taken care of by the pension fund. So what happens in situations? Let's go through the scenarios, and maybe these are scenarios that a lot of people might not necessarily want to think about, but they are a reality. A husband leaves the village, moves to the metropoles because of work, and finds himself in a situation where he is fatting and sitting with a girlfriend. Same thing that could happen to a lady. A lady moves to the metropoles, falls in love with a boyfriend, and he might be maybe starting a new job or in between jobs, and she ends up fatting and sitting with him. If any of those people die while they are fatting and sitting, and after their death, the person they were living with comes forward and says, I was financially dependent on this deceased member of yours who was contributing to a pension fund, they've got a right to a stake of that pension fund. Because the Pension Fund Act, Section 37C says that the pension will be distributed to those people who are your financial dependents. What are the different categories of financial dependents? Well, the first one is your legal dependent. These are people who are born from you or who you have created as a dependent through the Marriage Act or whatever, through Department of Home Affairs. If you have married someone, they automatically become a legal dependent of yours, which means that if you were alive and you were not supporting them, they would be able to institute a maintenance claim against you. So these would be your kids that are really your children, the ones that you sometimes run away from. They have a legal right to make a claim against you, whether you are living or whether you are dead, and if you are dead, if you do have a pension fund. Then we move to people that are called financial dependents. It gets a little murky here because it's not even just people that are your family or people that you have married. If you are fatting and you are sittering with someone and you die while you are doing that, but she or he can prove that you used to financially support them, they can make a claim against your pension fund. Now this again may sound scary, but it is the reality of life. That is why it's so important for you that when you're filling out that form for your pension fund with HR, you need to be as honest as possible. At the end of the day, by the time you are dead, the person that you are being honest to is not able to do anything. You are dead. So you cannot get upset at a dead person. In actual fact, in black communities, Ubuntu says that you cannot be upset and be disrespectful to a dead person. So even if they cheated and they've got more than one child, they are dead. It doesn't matter, darling. So rather write them. And I'll tell you why it's important to be honest and truthful in that beneficiaries form. While it is a guide, it is important for you to be honest because it will not prolong the distribution of your pension fund. The unfortunate thing, and happens a lot, is that people are not truthful on the beneficiaries list. The trustees get a copy of the beneficiaries list, and then out of the blue, somebody pops up and says, I am pregnant with Sipo's child. And Sipo's child would have been a financial dependent and a legal dependent of Usipo. So therefore, I need to also get a portion, or my child needs to get a portion of that pension fund. And unfortunately, the trustees have a legal mandate to then do investigations to prove that that child is indeed a future financial and legal dependent of Uputsipo. So what will happen is that the children that you currently have, or the wife or spouse that you have married, will now also have to wait until the investigations have been completed. This can take between 1 to 12 months. Do you really want the people that you really would like to benefit from your pension fund to suffer while waiting for investigations to be concluded? This is why it is important for you to be honest on that pension fund beneficiaries nomination list. While yes, it sometimes can come across as a wish list and a whatever, but at the end of the day, you are giving the trustees some guidance in terms of what will happen if you are to die while you're contributing towards a pension fund. The other thing that you've got to think about, which is very important, and we do this because of Ubuntu. Let's say, for instance, you are an aunt and your sister is currently in between jobs, or she's unable to pay for your nieces and nephews' school fees, and you decide to step in and you start paying for those. Unfortunately, they also become your financial dependents. Why? Because you've been financially paying for their education. And if the trustees feel that you've been paying long enough for them to become a dependent, it means that when you do die, they can also come and make a stake against your pension fund. So how do you maneuver around this? I've spoken to a couple of financial advisors, and the best that they say is that what you need to possibly do is that when you put them on a beneficiary list, make a note next to their name and say, just make a note and say, I am temporarily financially paying for these kids or supporting these children. Even your friend, you might be helping your friend out with rent. That can become a financial dependent. It's important for you to remember this. It also speaks to future dependents. As I said, if you have impregnated someone, the person that you have impregnated, if you've been financially supporting them, they can make a claim. But if the child is found to also be yours, they too become a legal dependent, which also automatically qualifies them as a financial dependent. So let me give you another scenario. What happens quite a lot is that, let's say, for instance, two people are married. They don't divorce, right? So they don't divorce. They don't go to court to actually finally put the marriage to rest. They separate, they live separately, but they are married in community of property. Now, the reality is that if you decide that you don't want your husband that you are separated from to get a portion of your pension fund because you still have a bit of minus, so you write your sister as the person that you would like to get your pension fund, you are wholly mistaken. Because what will happen is that your spouse still has a claim for your pension fund. So it's important for you to remember this. Even though your sister might be the more financially stable and probably financially responsible person, your spouse, because you did not divorce them, will still have a stake or a claim against your pension fund. That's why it's important to make the notes in that beneficiaries list to say, yes, I am still legally married to this person, but they are financially reckless and I'm worried about my children because they are minors. Now, it looks very different when it comes to your will and your estate and other assets that you've got that go under your actual will. There, a person that you are fighting and sitting with has no legal and no financial claim against what you have put in your will unless you have stipulated that you would like them to benefit. So you can fight and sit with somebody for 10, 20 years. If you did not legally marry them, they've got no right to claim against your estate, especially on things that you have put in your will, unless you have stipulated. But remember, guys, it is also important to remember that when you're married in community of property, the person that you have married is got a right to get 50% of whatever it is that you own. So what do you do, for instance, if you find out that your husband has been hiding some children or your wife has been hiding some children from you? If you are married in community of property, what the trustees will do is that when this person does die, the money there is no automatic thing that says the pension fund needs to go to you because you are married in community of property and you are entitled to 50%. If your husband or your wife has made children and they still have minors who are probably more dependent than your spouse on that money, they will give a bigger portion to those children, even if he did not marry their mother or their father. It is important for you to remember this, that the pension fund is basically leveled against what the Pension Fund Act says. And Section 37C speaks a lot about how that money is going to be distributed. If you want to look at some cases, go look at Makume versus Cape Retirement Joint Fund, I think it's called. You will find there that the court actually held that just because the wife was married to this man, the death benefit does not allow her to get 50% or immediate or automatic 50% of the pension fund. But if you are married in community of property and you decide to divorce, you are entitled to 50% of their pension fund. But remember, if you decide that you want to withdraw that money immediately because you want nothing to do with this person that you are married to, that you are now divorcing, you are now liable for the tax that needs to be paid when that pension fund actually pays out. So this is something else that a lot of people don't think about, that at the end of the day, if you're going to be withdrawing money from a pension fund, and it is because of a divorce decree, you are probably, as the spouse, going to be, the spouse that's withdrawing the money is going to be liable for the tax that they need to be paid. I'd like to refer you to another case, and I think it's called, it was Sitole versus ICS. Yes, ICS Provident Fund. And basically, the Board of Trustees had given the death benefit, which is the payout of a Provident Fund of the deceased member, to the grandmother because she was the head of the house and she was taking care of it. But the court held that Section 37C is very clear on who should get the death benefit of a Provident or a pension fund. And it needs to be the most vulnerable of the financial dependents. And it was found that the deceased member who was actually contributing to this pension fund was actually survived by a spouse and 2 children. And ultimately, because they are the financial dependents, they then got the benefit of that pension fund. So it was actually overturned by the court, the decision that was made by the Board of Trustees to pay the grandmother. Even though she was the head of the house, they said no, because she is not necessarily the only financial dependent. Even though she might be the most responsible, this deceased member was still survived by his spouse and his 2 children, and they actually ended up paying the money to the wife and the children. But of course, Section 37C of the Pension Fund Act has a whole lot more interpretation that we all still need to understand. What is really important for me, for people to understand from this video, as I said, I'm not a financial advisor, neither am I a law expert, so I'm not giving you financial advice. But I want you to just be aware of that, the first and foremost, the first and most important thing is that your pension fund does not fall under your will. So it is not part of your estate. Number 2, you do need to create what is called a beneficiary nomination list, and on that please stipulate why you are financially supporting certain people that you might not want to actually benefit from it. Thirdly, be honest, because you don't want the people that you really want to cater for with that death benefit in your pension fund to not immediately get the distribution of that money or the benefit of that money, because the trustees have to now do a thorough investigation. And when we talk about thorough investigation, they go everywhere, guys. They will ask your neighbors, they will check your bank accounts, they will speak to people, they will do a thorough investigation, because that's what the Pension Fund Act actually requires from the Board of Trustees, because that section actually gives the trustees so much power to be able to distribute your pension fund. And I think last but not least, it is important for you to understand that if you want your people to benefit in your death, right? It's not enriching them, it is taking care of them financially. You need to have honest conversations when it comes to money. Sometimes what happens is that people have pensions, but their nominees and their nominated beneficiaries don't even know about these pensions or these pension funds. And unfortunately, let me tell you now, financial institutions are not going to go out of their way to try and find you. So it is important for you to know if your parent, if your boyfriend, if your husband, if your wife has a pension fund, and if they do, ask them, who is on that pension fund? Who have you nominated? And if they're not going to be honest with you, at least know that it exists, so that if it does happen, that they do have an untimely death or something that does happen to them, you do know that they did try and take care of you financially, and you can go and actually find out from which financial institution it is. Sometimes it's from the financial institution, sometimes it's from the employer. And from there on, you can actually find out more information. There are many people in this country who are sitting where, they've changed their phone numbers, they've changed email addresses, but they've been nominated as beneficiaries for some sort of pension fund payout or death benefit, but the financial institutions have done very little to try and find them, and it's easy for them just to say, we couldn't find you. And you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you move from being a minor that could have benefited from this pension fund. You struggle through school, there's no money to pay for you to go to school, and then you come out and you're no longer a minor, and the pension fund can no longer pay out to you.